one of the most exciting ones that I believe is going to be today because of who these people are, what they've done, what they're doing, and the topic that we're going to be hitting on. So the skills desired for rev-based SaaS roles. So that is something that is who they would hire, right? This is going to be something we're going to touch on. And these are the experts. Let's hear from them. So this is Rodney Marega, we've got Charles Shea, and we've got Brianna Yarbrough, who are amazing humans inside and out who have wisdom galore. So Rodney, take it away. Pumped to hear what you guys have to say. That rhymed. I loved it. All right. See y'all.
Thank you, Amelia. All right. Welcome, everyone, for joining the jobs panel for skills desired for revenue-based SaaS roles. My name is Rodney, and I am the job support lead at RevGenius, and essentially supporting the initiative of helping RevGenius community members get jobs. And today, I'm very honored to be joined by two very talented professionals who have made valuable contributions to the sales, tech, startup, and various other communities, specifically in the theme of helping people get jobs. So as we have conversations today on helping job seekers improve their chances of getting hired, if you have any questions, feel free to post it on the Q&A or the chat, and we will address them as we go. But yeah, I'll introduce the panelists, leaders in their own fields, and definitely people we can learn from, starting with Brianna Yarbrough. Brianna is a co-founder of C Model and also VP Revenue Operations at Pontoon Solutions. And if you see her LinkedIn, and if you get a chance to know her, you'll know that she has a breadth of experiences. Of course, the Rev Ops, but also enablement, GTM, learning and development, diversity, equity, inclusion, really a multitude of disciplines that contribute to how she shows up for people and for businesses. And so welcome, Brianna. And yeah, would you like to take this moment and share more about yourself and your background and your journey and, things top of mind for you today?
Absolutely. Thank you, Rodney. That was a wonderful introduction. I think I need you to intro me for everything at this point. A little bit about me. I live in Houston, Texas. I actually started out my career in oil and gas. So unconventional, but it's Houston. That's what happens here. And went into tech, never kind of really looked back from there, and just started to, find ways to move up the ladder and doing a lot of just stakeholder engagement, interacting with leaders. For whatever reason, I've always reported into someone at the C-suite level. And so got a lot of very fast and engaging learnings along the way. And here I am, a founder myself at this point. I am at the top of the food chain, and it's a fun and exciting, interesting, very fast-paced learning experience. C Model is a decision intelligence platform that is for executive consumption. It helps you keep your pulse on your business with machine learning and AI. And so check us out.
Great. Thanks, Brianna. And Charles Shea, I've gotten to know Charles when we served as mentors to help aspiring sales professionals land SaaS selling roles. And really, I learned a lot from Charles in terms of how he did resume reviews, interview practice, and general job search tips. Charles was a software developer that became a top performing salesperson in LinkedIn, and then with sales leadership roles in HackerRank and Google, and now very recently became the new VP of sales at Switchboard Software. So Charles, welcome. And just as Brianna shared, would you like to share more about your background, your journey, and things you're working on today?
Yeah, thank you so much, Ronnie, and pleasure to be here. Similar to Brianna, I think my career certainly had done several pivots. Like sort of Ronnie mentioned, I had done a software developer to start, and I pivot into hardware sales. And then when that software is eating the world, I pivot into the software sales, into particularly HR SaaS. And then latest, transitioning from one industry that you spend quite a bit of time into another industry is incredibly difficult. So I did another pivot. Took a while into the data industry. So I certainly have a lot of personalized, kind of experience and tip and trick that I personally experience and implement myself, not just something that I found on Google that I can share today.
Great. Thank you, Charles. And let's get right to it. So for job seekers listening, we'll ask Charles and Brianna their insights as leaders themselves. And for both of you, my first question is, what advice would you give to someone who is actively looking for SaaS roles? How can they stand out from other candidates?
Brianna, you want to go first?
Sure, I'm happy to. The advice that I would certainly give is clearly do your research, right? There is a highly competitive market at the moment. There, unfortunately, is a lot of things that are going on that result in layoffs, right? You want to understand what the businesses are currently doing, how they're performing, are they doing well? Could you possibly be laid off? That's one piece of the puzzle, right? Go into the right company, do your research, have conversations with people that already work there. How long have they worked there? What has their experience been like? I really feel like a day in the life sort of conversation and that internal insight is extremely valuable because a recruiter is just going to sell you on joining their company. They want to go ahead and just get through all the candidates and find someone that has the right skill set. But outside of that, also be very good about selling yourself. If you don't brag on yourself and you don't know your value, you're going to have a lot of trouble trying to get someone else to see that you're valuable. So tap into what it is that you've done extremely well, like documenting what your achievements have been, whether that's like mine would be like, growing revenue by 300% in a year at an ed tech company, right? Or being awarded a specific award by some type of association or something that is of high standard in the industry. So be really good about selling yourself and networking, knowing the right people. A lot of the times jobs that come about don't even get posted. It's about who you know and you demonstrating your qualifications before they sometimes even know that they need them.
Great. Charles, anything to add?
Yeah, no, it's great. A fantastic tip on Brianna. So typically I see, career job searching just like how I would manage a sales funnel, if I'm being completely honest here, right? I feel like too little people feel like they can only get a job through job posting or referrals in that sort of format. So I feel like you should treat your job search like how you would prospect and source a deal in sales, right? I think nothing shows more proactiveness and an interest in a really personalized email that you proactively reach out to founders, VP of sales, showing why you have done your homework on your end, showing why you're interested in the role, if not the company, how you align with the values, to really reach out to them to source those opportunities. Because oftentimes, like what Brianna said, the best job in the world typically doesn't get posted. If not, there's tons of people that's applying to it. So you really need to really stand on the crowd, and nothing shows more than you reaching out proactively, showing that you can do the sales component, you can hunt, and you've done your homework. So I personally believe it or not, all my career, all the jobs I have gotten so far, none of them are from job posting. All of them are through me proactively reaching out because I need to be particularly passionate about the company for me to work there for long term, right? So I much rather for me to qualify those companies first than the reverse, right? So yeah, so that's what I would say to really for you down to just be aggressive and be proactive.
Yeah, no, great points for the both of you. And to both of your points, research and discovery, pre-sales as we speak, Brianna mentioned back channeling, right? Talking to as many people as possible. And then Charles, making sure that this is a really sales funnel, right? As a candidate. As a follow-up to your points, when it comes to role specific, jobs, so starting with you, Brianna, when you think about Rev Ops or enablement, what can candidates do specifically to prep for these roles?
Yeah, I think a lot of the preparation that I have over the years, just done a lot of research myself and self-taught, completely, setting myself up for success by familiarizing myself with technologies and always being cutting edge with my own research and understanding and being in the right circles, right? Communities like Rev Genius, amazing resources for tapping into people that are already in the field that you can continue to brainstorm with, bounce ideas off of. And one thing that I love about community is that everyone's always willing to help. So you don't have, crickets or someone that is competitive with you or those sorts of things. And I through that have, gained many mentees and have people that I talk to on an ongoing basis about leveling themselves up in their careers. And so I would say for RevOps specific, getting yourself started and trying to break into revenue operations, first things first, understand technology, understand people and what process, organizational design looks like and what it means. Understand the pillars, be great at spreadsheets, and understand also that the data architecture within an organization always should equal a single source of truth. If you are not building towards that in your RevOps role or being able to demonstrate that you've done something like that before as you're interviewing with a company, then you're kind of a few steps behind. So kind of catch up there, get familiarized with it, and make the right relationships. Talk to people that are in roles like mine, VP of RevOps, or senior. There's a lot of senior directors of RevOps. We're starting to see CROOs on the horizon. And like I said, people are willing to help. I think the positive thing about the revenue community is that we're all about creating value all around for each other.
Great. And for Charles, for BDR, SDR, AE roles, anything practical you can share that would help them kind of kickstart their job search?
So how to prepare for the job search, essentially. Yeah. I think it goes back to what Brianna sort of mentioned. It's about research, right? Like, how do you what type of industry do you want to be in? What type of role do you want to be in? How does your skill align with those? Especially, I think one of the questions that come in is like, have we ever hired a sales professional that has a proven record but not in SaaS sales, right? How do you tie your current sales experience to the SaaS sales, right? How do you pitch? It's all about the storytelling, right? How do you tie into the how you sell into the particular industry or the method of selling, right? If not, how do you tell the story in terms of how you're a top performer in a particular industry? That's not relevant, but you got that grit, but you got the skills, but you can learn the industry knowledge fairly quickly, right? Maybe reading out books ahead of time. That's where all this it's all about the research and preparation that goes into, and also the storytelling that you can tell either through an email to source for that opportunity or in an interviewing process. So, you can only learn as much as you can, right? So
I actually have a piggyback on that, Charles. Like, I think that we're seeing a lot more people that are not in SaaS at all, and you have to really leverage and start to lean on those transferable skills. For example, I've had a couple of people reach out to me that are teachers or real estate agents, and those are highly transferable skills as you're thinking about moving into SaaS, especially an SDR role, getting your feet wet and starting to understand what it actually means to work for a SaaS organization. And those transferable skills look like, interpersonal skills and people and relationships, and, having the ability to be personable and talk to people, the extroversion, as well as the process and the organizational piece, logging things, using technologies. These roles all have them. We just have to be good storytellers, like you said, Charles, to be able to convey that and sell ourselves.
Yeah, especially when it comes to targeting, right? Like, to say if you're in real estate, maybe you target real estate SaaS, right? Insurance tech, right? Whatever it might be, or education. There's tons of ed tech, right? If you're a teacher, want to transition into sales. So I think it's setting yourself up for the best possible way to be successful, and you have to do the research around that and position yourself. So
this is a nice tie-in to the next question, which is, as leaders in leadership positions, what qualities and competencies do you specifically look for in candidates? Meaning, do they need to have SaaS background, or, is it basically just bits and pieces that can form into a total profile?
Yeah,
Charles, I think you should go first on this one.
Maybe I'll go first on this one. I think it's highly dependent on the type of role, right? If I'm hiring someone who's a senior level role, then I'm most likely leaning heavily more towards our industry knowledge, obviously sales experience that's in the particular field. But let's say it's a BDR, SDR, maybe even junior inside sales rep, then I'm mostly looking for just the natural sales experience, right? Basic sales experience, natural curiosity, coachability, interpersonal skills, all these things that we can easily coach and morph this person that has a really sounded soft skills into the right perfect fit this company wants. But I mean, senior level roles, man, expecting you to go hit the ground running without much coaching and much hand holding and closing that 6-figure deal, 7-figure deal. Most likely, you probably want to be able to talk the lingo, speak the lingos, and obviously have the right skill set in qualifying the deals and stuff like that. So just depends on the seniority of the role.
100% agree. That is exactly where my thoughts lie. I need those senior level roles to be partners to me in my organization, not some hierarchical, egotistical, like demanding relationship, right? I need partnership. And that partnership means that you are close enough to my level to still be mentored, coached, all of those things, but experienced enough to create and add value quickly. I would also say, as I'm thinking about people entering sort of at the entry level of the career ladder in revenue operations specifically, there are some key skill sets that are very important. Analytical thinking, being able to problem solve, really strong communication skills, over communicating, because when you work in RevOps, there's a lot of stakeholders and you've got to keep everybody aligned on the same page. And there's a lot of project related work. You're implementing new systems. You're managing the changes of a new way of doing things in Salesforce or some other system. And so you have to manage those things effectively. That project management skill set is highly important, and a deep understanding of technology in general, or an ability to be adept at learning new softwares. Those are the key components for me.
Mm-hmm.
Great, very insightful. How do we get this into paper, onto the resume, right? I think a lot of folks have trouble, very skilled, very qualified people, but have a hard time putting this down onto their resume. And so for the both of you, regardless of the role, what advice can you share when it comes to resume prep?
I think for me, resume prep is something that I always share with everyone, is that less, especially when you go to market function, less words, more numbers. Period. Right. Like, I think, first of all, I mean, me being in HR industry for quite some time, the data has shown that on average, each recruiter spent only 5 seconds per resume. Right. If you look at your eyes in terms of scanning through, the number stands out, not the words. Right. And then also the numbers also help you quantify in terms of your success. Right. So that's what I would say is basically less words, quantify as much of your success, based on maybe how you benchmark towards other team members. Obviously, your quota attainment, your dollars amount closed, or maybe if you work on a project, will be percentage improvement or an accuracy or whatever it might be, or time saved. So you can always quantify, right, whatever kind of work that you do to level the success.
I couldn't agree with that more. It is also highly relevant in the RevOps space. We look for things like cost savings. What did you negotiate for this new technology contract or MSA that we're putting in place for our organization? Or how much have you grown revenue by, the historical data pre-RevOps or pre you joining an organization versus when you were there? Those are highly important details. What is the time period, the time delta? What is conversion rates looking like now that you have started to implement new processes and you're starting to do enablement activities to help people be more consistent in driving some of those efficiencies? So quantifiable for sure. And then I also kind of read between the lines, like I'll scan for a couple of words, keywords. And those keywords for me are things like operational excellence, efficiency, conversions. Like scanning for those top level revenue keywords are also highly important. And so make sure that you understand what it means to be in the revenue function, what those keywords are. They're likely related to KPIs in the RevOps space. And those KPIs are overall just kind of overarching for the business's performance. And so if you can demonstrate in your resume that you have, really made a difference at an organization at that top level, this is stuff that's being reported up to the CEO, the board, the investors, then we know that you might have what it takes to have a conversation with.
Great.
Actually, Ronnie, I have a question for you. Maybe you can chat in on this one because I think it's sort of Brianna touched on it. I think resume, in terms of working on it, there's a two component, right? There's a systematic component that ATS systems, applicant tracking systems, sort of the machine, how it reads it and how it prioritizes it, and obviously there is the hiring manager component, right? So how do you balance the keywords that you put into your resume versus, I say, numbers that machine will understand?
Yeah, it's a great question. And there's a lot of myths when it comes to the ATS actually deciding to screen an applicant. Based on what recruiters say, there's both a hybrid in terms of manual and screening involved. They're the ones setting the settings, for like basic things like, is it location specific? Do they have the necessary, years of experience for the role, et cetera, et cetera. I think ultimately you don't want to keyword stuff your resume. There are tools out there that you can, for example, JobScan, that can give you the indicators where, okay, based on a job description on one side, you can copy and paste your resume and see if there's a matching there that you can use. That's a starting point. But ultimately, when it comes to the job description and when it comes to the language of the hiring manager, and based on your points, I would just say quantify it as much as you can. Talk about your results, talk about the impact you made. And as a follow-up, actually, back to you, Charles, when you talk about numbers, more numbers, less words, how do you do that for somebody who's entry level, who's never had a SaaS role, who's never had anything to quantify? What can they say in their resume?
Man, this is hard. Yeah, I mean, SDR resume typically are like that, right? The worst ones are the hardest one, not the worst. The hardest one are the one that they never work a day in their life. Let's say even a Subway or like, I don't know, Best Buy. Then that's really hard to quantify. I mean, then that's where you usually I bypass those if there's other better candidates, to be honest, has some sort of working experience that they can quantify. But that's where I sort of going back into, the proactive approach, right? If you literally have a blank slate on your resume, then it's up to you to demonstrate the proactiveness to the hiring manager, then hunt for those opportunities. Otherwise, you can always quantify Best Buy in a Subway, whatever other, I guess, Cutco knife kind of engagement that you have.
Yeah, my thoughts on that is when you have zero experience and you're trying to break into a new field is one of the things that I look for in that level of role is, hey, okay, I see that this person's an athlete, they're a team player, right? Or I see that they did something particular in college, president of some social club, etc. They have leadership skills and capabilities. They're go-getters and they can likely figure things out and have that mindset that is a growth mindset and solve problems. The alternative piece to that, or the alternative side to that, is there are a lot of courses. Document those courses on your resume. Rev Genius has what is it's called SDR. Wasn't there an SDR? Yeah. So there's courses everywhere. Do them and put them on your resume. Those are going to stand out for recruiters and hiring managers.
There's a question by Eddie. What's one or two successful skills by SDR on the job you have seen?
Pre-hire or post-hire?
Post-hire, he says.
Oh, okay. I think it's obviously the basic skills of prospecting and discovery. I think those are probably the two skills that's most relevant. Cold calling, and then also doing discovery.
I have managed an SDR team. I know this. Every tech company is different. That's the funny part. And so, like, org design can be any way that you want it to be. And so, I've had an entire deal desk and an SDR team reporting into Rev Ops, and it works. But I would say those 1 to 2 skills post hire that come in mind for me are like networking. Like, are you doing social selling? Are you good with meeting people and having like a quick coffee chat and then kind of like segueing into what your technology is or what it is that you actually want to put in front of them and pose a possible demo meeting being set up. And so I look for those types of things, the initiative to take it a little bit more out of the box and not just doing and managing tasks on a day-to-day basis and hitting your numbers, doing the calls. Social media is huge. And as an SDR, if you're talking about the value you're providing or you're creating valuable posts, people are going to be intrigued. They're going to want to get to know you. They want to ring that bell and continue to engage with you. And then that also leads to possible pipeline generation.
Yeah, I'm also going to add, commonly there's three main categories. So obviously sales acumen at that level, research, prospecting, can you call somebody, can you email, et cetera. And then there's the technology piece. So you'll have a tech stack. Can you use the tech stack together to get leads, prospects, send them in sequence, et cetera, right? All funneled into a CRM. And then the last category, which I don't know how to categorize, but it's more intangible. So things like resilience, perseverance, mindset, craftiness, those things that, hiring managers look for to understand, okay, can this person manage bad days when nobody wants to talk to them or when there's, pressure, right? So can this person be coachable, right? So those things also matter, which hiring managers won't really know until they hire somebody with that profile. So I'd probably say those three things are important.
That's an amazing answer. So just erase my answer completely. So,
I know. We'll go with Rodney.
Bren asked the question, does the panel have any thoughts about people working in SaaS on the ops side? So process work, capability work, tech stack, etc.
Thoughts about...
I know, I have to read it again.
Anything in particular, Bren?
Bren, do you want to elaborate on the chat?
Or we can come back, I guess.
Yeah.
If we're still talking about skill set, I think they're also transferable, right? The coachability, the proactive, taking initiative, those skill sets are highly important. Stakeholder engagement and knowing how to juggle many different stakeholders and tap into the way that they like to receive information. I know that sounds way off, but it's very important. While they're not your direct supervisors, these are people that have to agree and validate and support and garner buy-in for what it is that you're trying to do for the organization. And when you're doing process work and capabilities and establishing a tech stack, you've got internal stakeholders that have to agree with you. And so bring in the facts, bring the data to support why this is something that needs to change. Talking about things like a bow tie, and I love the bow tie, that kind of iterates on this is the volume that we need to see at the top of funnel. These are the specific quotas that we'll assign to the people that are doing the actual selling, and we'll track it with these particular mechanisms from a tech stack capability, capacity planning, methodology. And as you continue to think about it, it always changes. It's always a constant iteration. RevOps is not an end-all be-all. There is always going to be room for optimization and continuing to think about how to iterate on it further.
Yeah, and if I would just add on top of the skill set, when I hired my RevOps person or sales op, I think to sum up, I'm just looking for someone who is data-driven first and foremost, who knows how to read data, gather data, process data, but also somewhat a project manager in some sense, right? Depends on how big the team is. Because what Brianna sort of said, this person has to manage a lot of internal conversation, internal stakeholders, internal champions, and being incredibly organized to push projects forwards or initiatives forward. But how this person does that, and also how this person make decision in terms of gathering data and processing those data is highly important in the ops world.
That's right.
Amazing answers. Moving on to the interview stage. So you send a resume, you get invited to a screening, you pass, now you talk to the hiring manager. Most frequently, this question comes up, or this variation question comes up when it comes to, tell me a time you overcame a challenge, or some other variation of that question. I'll start with you, Charles, and then I'll go to Brianna when it comes to RevOps. But with Charles, for sales roles, let's say a scenario is, it's the last month of the quarter, and you're behind quota, and you're feeling the pressure. What do you do? How do you convey that narrative of overcoming this challenge?
Yeah, so typically those questions obviously is to test basically if you truly have the experience, right, in doing a particular role. So I think not necessarily about like the end of quarter, but right, typically let's say for sales role, that the typical answer that you can think about is, what's this complex deal that you recently closed or that you have closed? What was the challenge? Well, how did you approach it? Whether or not it's basically leveraging a lot of internal stakeholder to multi-thread the company and talking to a lot of most different line of business to sort of swarm the particular champion, whatever, or decision makers, whatever it might be. It's like, what was your approach and what was the outcome, right? I think there's a STAR method that sort of people mention about in terms of you can sort of focus on. I don't know exactly what that means, but I forgot what it stands for, but it's really focusing on what was the problem, how did you address it, what's the method of addressing it, and what was the outcome, right? So that's how I typically want to make sure. Again, it's about storytelling. That's how I typically want to focus around. And it's not just about deals. You can also talk about obviously projects that you've done.
Yeah. You stole my answer, by the way. I was 100% going to say STAR method: situation, task, action, result. If you cannot easily convey that story in that format to tell me, well, I noticed that this was in disarray. There was a problem here. And I went and did some research. This is a task, right? I went and did some research, had some conversations, dug into it a little deeper, started to really kind of, for a Rev Ops job, started to build out what the process workflow looked like in a visual aspect, so that then when I present it to people, they agree and say, yeah, this is how the process flows currently. And this is our bottleneck. This is our problem. And then what action did you take to solve that bottleneck and that problem? And how did it positively impact the way of doing business? Was there time saved? Was there money saved? Because you also have to think about cost savings in the aspect of every employee, every hour that they spend is dollars. And so when you're ineffective in doing your work and you're not thinking about how to automate and create efficiencies in that sense, you're hemorrhaging money. And so that STAR methodology is something that I think is the most ideal way to convey how you have, practiced this work for, and how you have overcome a situation that is a challenging one to kind of demonstrate. Like, going and telling that story is the magic key to success here.
Yeah, for sure. One thing I'll add on the IC level for AEs, for example, I would do a pipeline analysis, right? If my pipeline is dry in the present, I look at the past, I look at the future, and see how can I bring it towards the present. And that's one way to understand the current state and see, based on the data, based on the tech available, what can you do to drive and solve problems of your circumstances. So for Brianna, this follow-up question is for you because you're in Rev Ops. I would imagine one of the struggles is facilitating change management when business leaders are not aligned. And so when that question comes up in an interview, what would you say in terms of how you handle that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that I always support decision and changes based off of facts, right? Data-driven analysis. You just mentioned it. Use that as your foundation to influence and help people understand the impact. Show them the good and the bad. The good in being, hey, if we make this small change that is going to take very short amount of time to implement and roll out to the organization, they'll be happier because we're reducing the amount of steps that they have to, input into systems, for example. Use that as an example. And then we will have this, change in direction that results in more time for strategic activities. And if we model that out, that could look like cost savings of $100,000 or more in a year. It is research shows that 3% of businesses have lost profits, right? 3% of profits have been lost at businesses based off of bad decisions and not really looking into their data and understanding it and reverse engineering where things are going wrong, where they're inefficient, and where they're wasting time. And so if you can demonstrate that in your conversation with a hiring manager by using the STAR method and telling your story in that format, you've already been a leg up.
Awesome. As hiring managers, what questions do you appreciate from the interviewee? Or put another way, what are good questions to ask from the interviewee that can show thoughtfulness, authenticity, and really curiosity to understand the business?
Yeah, I love questions. When people don't ask questions or ask like one or two, I think I have a unconscious negative reaction to that. I want it to be very dialogue related and understanding the whole of the business. And so I think that the type of questions that I like to hear around, are your systems currently fully integrated? If they're not, is there a plan to do so? What does your tech stack look like? How are people managing the sales process today? Are we truly, because it varies at different organizations again, are we truly revenue operations that's focusing on marketing, sales, customer success, the works of the business? Or is this more of a go-to-market sales operation, go-to-market operations role? Gaining clarity around those things it shows me that they have a genuine interest in knowing how are things operating. When they talk about how does the team communicate effectively, what works for the current stakeholders, what could I expect in a day of the life at this organization. Interestingly enough, that's one of the tougher questions for me to answer, because in RevOps, you're putting out fires, you're doing tactical work, you're doing strategic work, you're building out plans. And so creating roadmaps. But the other side of that coin is I kind of almost play devil's advocate a little bit. And I ask them, based off of what you know about what I've told you thus far, in your first 90 days, how would you make an impact?
That's good. And Ronnie, are you asking, so what are the type of questions that you expect interviewees to sort of ask, and obviously vice versa?
Yeah, Charles, as a sales leader, what questions do you like your candidates asking you?
Yeah.
Right.
So typically, I have 3 questions that I typically want to make sure I prepare for. The first question is always tailored towards the interviewer to show that I have done some research on this individual person. And second one is more role related. And third is just more generalized. And obviously third and fourth and fifth could be all generalized. So the first one, that's more tailored towards the interviewers based on research, could be like as simple as, why did you decide to work at company XYZ? Because your background X, Y, and Z, right? Something as simple as that, right? To show that you have done this. I've done a little bit of reading on him. Or, hey, I came across your podcast. I came across your YouTube video that you mentioned XYZ. And I would love to get your thoughts on ABC, right? And then the second question, it could be more role related. When I mention role related, it could be, let's say, if you're talking to the CEO or you're talking to the product team, it depends on the size of the company, right? It's a startup. Startup typically don't have $1 billion in ARR. So typically I would ask, like the product person or the CEO is like, hey, what's your product vision to get to $1 billion ARR?
That's a great
one. Challenge them a little bit, because you don't get to $1 billion ARR in one product. You get there for multiple products, right? Like, what is your roadmap? Do you have a vision for that? Or just more like you sort of just playing as you go, not deciding as you go type of thing? And then the third, more generalized question could just be more like headwind and tailwind. It's like, hey, what are your biggest challenge today? What's working and what's not working? Right. So this way you get a sense in terms of, okay, what's going on internally, either at the company or at the go-to-market team. So.
Wow. I can't wait to watch this recording, because I'm going to steal a lot of your suggestions. Thank you both. We have a few minutes. I do want to get to the employer side, because we may have an audience from employers. And in your point of views, what would you change or improve about the current hiring process today to attract talent for revenue-based SaaS roles.
So, you mentioned this at the start. I'm a huge DEI advocate. One of the main things that I think I tie into this is salary transparency from the very, very beginning. And I know that there's a huge percentage of companies that are still not doing that. Let's just be realistic from the very beginning so that people know if it fits in their needs for their well-being, right? This is human lives. The other part of the hiring process is where we could do better is coming up with a rubric. Like I love to do things in my interview processes that revolve around, a presentation. Nothing crazy. I've heard of some crazy ones. Actually, I heard of one yesterday. One of my friends called me and
Oh no, she froze.
You called her about this crazy presentation. Maybe I can jump in here then. I think I would agree with Brianna as well. I think transparency is very important, not necessarily just about money, but just transparency about your culture, your benefits, what the role is. Be authentic, be creative, and be organized. And what I simply meant by that is that, for example, you might have a career page that talks about not just the jobs, right? But why are people there, right? What was the core value of the company? What makes people interested and excited to work for the company? I even saw one company that had done a job posting called basically a video job description. They had the person that said the SDR or the AE actually record themselves talking about the role, what the pay is, how excited they are to have another person join the team. That's the job description. It's not a typical, text job description. I just thought that was super creative. They put a name to a face. So, just having that level of authenticity and then obviously creative and also transparency. They talk about the pay, they talk about what the role actually entails, what the hours looks like, what's the work-life balance. And also I think the last piece that's very important because I just went through this entire process, the hiring process to get the job where I am today. I have right now. It's just being obviously upfront and organized about the hiring process. Hey, you're back.
I am. The lights flickered and my Wi-Fi went out. Sorry.
Okay. But both great answers. I know we have a couple minutes as we wrap up. Very, very quick. If there's a call to action you want to make for both the job seeker and the employer in terms of improving the job seeker's chances of getting a job and also helping the employer get better at hiring talent, what would you say? Start with you, Brianna.
So I'm sorry. The question is what actions can they take on both sides, the job seeker and the employer, for them to improve their chances? I would say that proactivity portion of what we talked about a little bit earlier is reach out to people that that you would report into based off of the job title that you're going after and start to establish those conversations and have that sales funnel, that sales pipeline and working through that list so that you can start to build relationships and they can think of you when there's an opportunity that comes about. When you get into that interview, be ready to sell yourself, make it quantifiable, tell them all of the percentages and metrics in the world about how you have been this amazing, incredible, high performer in your previous roles. And on the employer side, I think hiring great talent really boils down to one, Glassdoor. I'm sorry. I still use Glassdoor. I go and do research there. There are other tools and technologies of doing that, having conversations with people that already work there so you can understand what to expect and what the culture is like. But
All right, Charles, you're up.
It's like Stranger Things. It's just gone.
Okay.
Yeah, so I mean, double down on what Brianna said. I would say not just to your prospective manager, actually the skip level, if not the skip level, because I would say that typically if those email works, they'll pass you down to the right person, and it makes the person, your potential manager, to hard to refuse to have that conversation with you when it's top down. And then so just be proactive. That's why I say that's number one tip I give the job. Just be proactive. And then for the employer, I would say is just be organized. there's nothing worse than a disorganized hiring process that candidate has no idea what they're expecting in the coming weeks or number of rounds or how much time they need to put into a presentation, which is ridiculous sometimes, is all the time you can spend in the world. So be very organized and set the level of expectation from both ends.
100% agree. I don't know if we're going to get cut off, but we're still here. Thank you, Charles. That was amazing. Brianna, thank you later, but that was also amazing. And, this is a great conversation. I feel like we can talk all day, but if you want to chat more, reach out to any of us. Happy to help.
We'll be on LinkedIn.
Yes, find us on LinkedIn. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Okay. Bye, guys.